Welcome in Exiles to another video. Today we're taking a look at the Behemoth. I hope you guys enjoyed the introduction video. We were able to defeat Simulacrum 15 of 15. Easy peasy. And that was a goal of mine with the Behemoth, the class with no spells, the underdog, the class that everybody kind of dismisses and says is worthless because you can't use spells. We have solved the Behemoth class. And basically what we're doing is stacking a ton of armor, and I want to show you guys exactly how we're getting our strength and our tanky and survivability on this build. You have to keep in mind, in a Simulacrum wave 15, you got all that stuff, the action speed reduction, you have things that remove your life recovery, a bunch of crazy Simulacrum delirious debuffs that you can't really avoid. But we managed to slug it through and able to stand and fight and beat wave 15. And of course, the core game mapping tier 17s super easy on this build, and with a little better weapon we probably could do ubers. Of course, our weapon currently is about 950ish DPS. If we can get over 1000 DPS, like a really nice mace with the physical as a random elemental, and we change it up to a little bit of elemental damage with this build, the damage actually skyrockets big time. And of course, if we do acquire a Mageblood, it'll take our armor up to almost 300k. We can optimize. Generally, if we level up and get all of our skill points in a Mageblood, we can just about get almost 300,000 armor, which is a lot of damage, a lot of mitigation. And I want to show you guys how we're doing the mitigation here. We're using a interesting timeless jewel that gives us divine flesh. Of course, everybody knows divine flesh, right? Now the cool thing is, with Behemoth we do have something new, which is incorruptible. Armor also applies to chaos damage taken from hits. So when we add that, we factor that in with our unbreakable, which also gives us 50% of damage taken from armor from hits as well. So we're getting also double armor with the unbreakable, and this allows us to stack a ton of armor. So we're at 100k with nothing on right now. And generally when we flask up, we have quite a bit, 1.46k. With our shouts up, we have about 190,000, almost 200,000. And I gotta replace this flask because we have crafted a ring that gives us vulnerability on hit, so we won't be using this flask anymore. We're gonna put a different flask in there, and maybe consecrated ground, or I could use this, the Stibnit, and just have some crafted stuff on it. But of course, when you get the Mageblood, I'm telling you guys, this is going to absolutely take the build to the next level. So Mageblood, new weapon, it will probably be able to do ubers. We're going to try and see if we can do ubers on the Behemoth build, and if I'm able to pull that off, it'd be incredible. So let's go over our gear, how we have this set up, because currently we're sitting at 83 all res. With our flask up, we're at 88% all res. So we're 2% off from having max 90% all res. On top of the armor divine flesh combo, this gives us an extraordinary amount of elemental damage reduction. And of course, since we're stacking tons of armor, our physical mitigation is extremely high, and we're not relying on things like molten shell and immortal call, things like that that kind of have to be up. You're pretty much super tanky at all times. Because you're focusing on getting your defenses straight up. You're not relying on molten shell being ticked or molten shell being on, mortal call being on and off. Certain things like that. So we're just super tanky. We got our endurance charges as well, which gives us another layer of mitigation. And then of course we also have fortify stacks, which gives us even further mitigation, damage reduction across the board. So the cool thing about the Behemoth is we can't use spells, right? So we can't curse enemies directly, but we can apply curses using things like curse enemies with vulnerability on hit, and an interesting craft that you can get on a runic enchantment on your axe is curse enemies with punishment on hit. And if you use an untouched soul, you can apply additional curses. We can apply 2 curses that increases our damage significantly when the enemy is low on life and just physical damage. And also punishment debilitates the enemy, so they do less damage. So with this combo, we can slap on our punishment if we're fighting a boss or a tough unique like in the Simulacrum, Kosis, stuff like that. We can also use our war cries and get additional armor and resistances, and switch back over and maintain our buffs. So as you see here, we maintain our buffs here. See our buffs ticking down, and that's a really cool weapon swap. But outside of that, you don't really have a lot of skills on your bar that you have to use. I mean, the only thing that I could probably add in is maybe loop slam, but we're so fast. We have onslaught, we have our movement speed from our boots, flask, and we also have rampage, which is another 50%. Our movement speed is absolutely insane on this build because rampage gives us 50% at 1,000 stacks. And then of course we're using a headhunter. If you manage to steal some buffs from enemies, like you can get haste, precision, all that stuff. We don't really need precision because we are using resolute technique. But you can steal a lot of auras from the enemies using the headhunter, and it just makes it an absolute blast to map and do simulacrums. This is probably one of the easiest simulacrum builds you could play because it's so cheap to set up. You could set this up for under 50 divs. And you can do wave 15 simulacrums. You can do T17s. You can map like safely, like you're so tanky and you only have to press one button. It's like really cool to play. You don't have to worry about mana reservation. You don't have to worry about clicking a bunch of spells on your bars, war cries, all that stuff. You don't really have to worry about that. We only have those two on there just because I just want to use them, because why not? Just quick weapon swap, get more armor, more damage, more mitigation. But outside of that, it's just one button, which is Bone Shatter Complex of Trauma. And the other thing is with the Steel Wield, the more armor we get, the more damage our Bone Shatter Complex does. And the cool thing about that is we do use Soul Ascension, which gives us insane attack speed with the Soul Eater stacks. So it synergizes well with the build, because Bone Shatter Complex allows us to do tons of hits, which means we get the 10 stacks quicker, doing lots of damage, ramping, damage, and then it resets. This is our current skill tree, and I'll go over the path of building as well. I do have it pulled up over here. Go ahead and import that, and I'll have it in the description as well, so you guys can kind of see. You guys can kind of see our setup here. And let me get everything up here. There's that. Alright, so we have our path of building here. Just so you guys can kind of see the numbers here. So we have everything ticked that we want. I don't need that anymore. I was just doing some testing. This is pretty much our current setup with the Guardian Pinnacle. We're sitting at 86,000 EHP. Now the most important things is Fizz max hit and Elemental max hit, and of course Chaos max hit. So this is without any Immortal Call, Molten Shell, all that stuff. So you're just straight up tanky, no tricks, just pretty much straight up tanky. As long as you have your Fortify, you have your Endurance charges, we have Adrenaline, like all this stuff gives us Onslaught, gives us like a ton of movement speed. Like we're just rocking and rolling on this build, and it's extremely fun to play, and it's super cheap to put together because nobody's really playing Behemoth or using any of these items. A lot of these items are super cheap to get and craft. A lot of the essences you need are super cheap because nobody cares about armor really. But I think we have solved the Behemoth class, and this is the 950 DPS weapon, and when I calculated like a much higher end weapon, maybe like 100 div weapon over 1,000 DPS, better mods, runic enchantments, we were hitting up to 20 million damage. I had to get a POB for the final like perfect gear, Mageblood, better mace, better chest, because we can get a chest that has 5,800 armor. The thing is, I would want to fracture the gain onslaught on hit, and then craft with essences for armor, and then we could probably get like 5,600, 5,800, maybe even 6,000 armor, which would be millions of damage extra. I would have to craft another royal plate to show, but I have this POB, which is the current version. Now I have a perfect POB, and that'll show like the maximum potential of the build. This is our current POB, and when I had put in a lot of max stuff, we were up there 20 million damage. We can get our elemental max hit even higher, chaos max hit even higher. The only thing is, we could work on some regen. And currently I'm only 94 because I've been messing around a lot. I've been using face breakers. We've been trying to solve a lot of stuff with Doriani's Fist, and I just recently started to actually be able to solve Behemoth class here and make it strong tanky and be able to survive Simulacrums. I started Simulacrums once I got a Headhunter, and I started with face breakers, but I wasn't able to get past about wave 12. Once we switched over to Bone Shatter and switched over to Unbreakable with Divine's Flesh setup, we were able to complete Simulacrum super easy. Another cool thing is you can actually take out one of your jewels and use Nature's Affinity, and that gives you even more damage mitigation here. Because you're standing still, I just don't use it when I'm mapping. But if I'm in a Simulacrum, I'll use Nature's Affinity, and that will give us an extraordinary amount of extra damage. Now, how we're getting max res is using Melding the Flesh, of course, and it's really easy to use Melding the Flesh on this character because we can use the Untouched Soul, and with white sockets you get 18% to all elemental resistances, and we just get a ton of white sockets on our items. You can get up to 3 on each item, and then the red sockets give you life, so you're stacking tons of life. That's how we have so much life, and because we don't use anything other than our 6-link setup. So we have a lot of utility coming from the Untouched. You can get an apply additional curse super cheap. Like, these things are cheap. You can go corrupt them, double corrupt them. They're 8-10 C a pop. I've been double corrupting, not double corrupting, but corrupting a whole bunch of them. I have one with max all res. I have one with movement speed for mapping. I'll show you guys. I have a ton of these all in here. I have a movement speed one too. I use that for mapping. So this is a good one for mapping. This is a good one for Simulacrum's bossing. And I just did this one just to kind of test and see. So I was just so close to max all res. I just wanted to see if how close I can get. We can upgrade our armor to get +3 there. We can get +2 here. And of course, I can also anoint Soul Steel, get another 1%. So it's really easy to hit 90 all res on this build. And so you can get super tanky all around without using a single spell. So no determination, no grace, you don't need any of that. You got considerable damage. You can do all the content except Ubers in this current form with the 50 div, like under 50 div. If you put a Mageblood on this, very powerful mace. I mean, if you have like high budget, you could have like perfect gear. You wouldn't have to worry about any spells, and you just smash, sit in Simulacrums, you could do Ubers, all that stuff. Super easy build to put together, very simplistic, and a lot of people usually say, oh, if you, the Unascended Marauder is better than the Behemoth, which is completely not true. People just don't really, I don't know, I guess it's Reddit, they don't really try to experiment with things, because that's what really Path of Exile is about. So of course, if you unascend, you lose tons of damage, you lose tons of mitigation, about 20,000. So this Unascended Marauder is not better. Even if you throw on 2 auras, let's say we threw on Determination, throw on your Determination and your Pride. That's like the 2 auras you can run without any nodes. You also have to give up blood magic, so you lose a ton of mitigation from your life. And let's say you run 2 Rs, then of course you gotta like take out skill points if you want to run more Rs. You gotta get Champion's Cause. You gotta come up here and get more mana reservation. You gotta use Enlighten, and at best you can get maybe Flesh and Stone extra, maybe a 3rd aura if you're really wealthy. Purity of Elements. So even with these changes, right, maximum effect, you're still doing less damage. You're also losing out on Rampage. So there goes 50% movement speed. There goes all that damage you get from Rampage. So no, an Unascended Marauder does not do more damage than the Behemoth, and that clears that up. And of course, a lot of people may say, oh well, you can go Ancestral Commander, he's way better. And Ancestral Commander, 3 maximum endurance charges does not give you, even with the same setup, like armor stacking setup, 3 endurance charges does not give you the tankiness that Incorruptible gives you using Divine Flesh setup. You can get this. Don't really need this because we're so tanky, but I guess this is some additional tankiness you could get. You can also get the action speed stuff. And of course, the last thing, you could even get more physical mitigation. So the EHP may be a little bit better for the overall EHP. Of course, you could use things like Molten Shell. But of course, those things require you to have those up. Molten Shell. So if you have your Molten Shell on, of course, the mitigation is super high with the Armor Stacker. But you got to keep in mind that Molten Shell does have a cooldown, and you don't always have that up. I guess the other thing is you could use some other spells too. Much easier to curse, and with Molten Shell you probably are a little bit more tanky. But again, you don't have Molten Shell up all the time. You can get some Warcry stuff. So Ancestral Commander is pretty much top dog, I would say. But it doesn't cater towards this build. You're probably going to lose a lot of damage, at least with the armor stacking setup. I'm not sure about Ancestral Commander in terms of other builds. I know a lot of people play Tectonic Slams with that, with the Warcries and all that stuff. But for the setup that I'm currently using, like an armor stacker, the steel wield is absolutely important. This is where all your damage comes from. 11, like if you don't have steel wield, you lose 11 million damage, and it just doesn't work. So I would say Behemoth is not is not weak. Behemoth is very strong, and if we could use spells on this class, it would actually be, it probably would be too strong. I mean, if you could use Determination and Grace on this, of course you can in party play, and a lot of people play this like in the party play. But if you could just use auras on your own, it would be too strong, in my opinion. It would just be too OP. Like you would be, I would be able to get like 1,000,000 armor, and all this mitigation would be, and it would be like too easy to do, right? It would be like, like this is super easy to set up, and just throwing on some auras like Termination Grace, using some March of Legions, it's just too easy. And Behemoth would just be too strong if you could use auras. I feel like it'd be too OP, especially with Incorruptible and Divine Flesh. You know, I think it'd be too powerful for the cost, because like it'd be so cheap, and everybody could just be an immortal Behemoth, unkillable, and that's with the auras. But without auras, I mean, it's still really strong. I mean, that's nothing to scoff at, and we're not even in the end game of the build. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and mess around with a Mageblood, right? So let's throw on our Mageblood. Let's throw on a Mageblood and just show you guys. So we throw on a Mageblood, right? And I'll upgrade my flask just to have the 70% on each of these. Well, actually, I'll make a new flask. Flask. So we'll make our flask here. So we'll start with the, where is it? Basalt flask. So we go ahead and slap on our effect. We'll slap on some armor. Apply enchantment, 70%. Go ahead and throw that flask in there for this one here. So right there, 46,000 armor. That's 1,000,000 damage just from having a Mageblood. It's 1,000,000 extra damage. Let's craft our next flask, and I wouldn't need the replica Witchfire Brew. Now I don't know why, but POB won't calculate cursing into vulnerability when you have, even if you have the ring on, it won't show the vulnerability for some reason, even though it does apply. But the vulnerability adds about 2.7 million. So remember that. And we'll go ahead and craft our next flask, which is the Easy Evasion. Where is it? Jade Flask. we'll go ahead and put the same mods on. Evasion, apply enchantment, make sure everything's maxed out for Mageblood. Apply that here. Boom, another 1,000,000 damage, 33,000 armor. You see where I'm going here? So that's just 2 flasks so far. Of course, with a ruby flask, with the Mageblood, we would be like max all res with the Mageblood. Why did I put my light at the meaning there? The melting. Okay. So with the ruby flask, of course, if you put the 10% on that, that would give us. I already have that set up actually. More life regen, 90 all res. And for the last flask, so keep in mind 2.7 million. For the last flask, I would use, I guess, a granite flask. Like if I really wanted to push the limits of armor, I would use a granite flask, and I don't really need any of these. I would just put some movement speed. 70%. Boom, boom, boom. Add to build. So with our granite flask, I would add another 1,000,000. So with the vulnerability from the Stibnit, that's 11 mil, so it would be about 12 million damage just with the Mageblood. We would have 245,000 armor. How much armor? 275,000 armor with our full flask setup. It would be around the ballpark of about 12 million damage. And of course, if we can upgrade our royal plate, so let's say I crafted the perfect royal plate. So we're just kind of doing this as we go. So we apply our enchantment, which is the 8% defense. We have 28 quality on this, and I couldn't afford a 30 quality, but this will do. But just so you can get an idea of how much armor you can get on this thing. So you can get over 6,000 armor on this. So let's just add that to the build. So if we applied our royal plate, there we go. 300,000 armor. And that would add like another 700k damage. And more mitigation for our survivability, 75, 45, 95,000. And this, of course, does not count our punishment, because remember we have our vulnerability level 21 would add, well, vulnerability would add about 3 million if we added that. And then of course if we use punishment and the enemy is on low life, that would add a ton of damage. I'm not able to get the POB to show it when you're on the Behemoth, but from our weapon swap, that would add a ton of damage from cursed enemies with punishment on hit. So we have a lot of damage potential, and of course we're not fully leveled up. Once we get more skill points, like we're level 94, we could get things like we could get some more Impale. That would add another 1.4 million, or we could go a Wrecking Ball, maybe some more armor per red socket or something wild. We could get something here, Kinetic Impacts. So we do have a lot of options to max out the build, and we're just kind of working as we go. Got a little sale here. We're just building as we go. As we get more currency, hopefully I can get a Mageblood and show you guys the absolute power of the Behemoth, like the fully in-game, full investment of the Behemoth, like fully invested, lots of currency put into it, better weapon, and show you guys how strong that is. I guess I could throw in a map. I guess we could throw in a map and show you guys what like a regular map looks like, right? What does regular mapping look like? Let's throw in a Forbidden Woods. And for the sake of all things, I'll probably throw on Leap Slam to not troll. Okay, there's my Leap Slam. Okay. So I just throw in an Alkengo map. And to show you guys what it looks like, just a little mapping segment. Quick map, like a regular map. I mean, it's just super easy. straightforward. Just like your standard bone shatter mapping. But yeah, you're pretty much unkillable. Like I'm not sure what the killing maybe some English, but in our current setup, unkillable. And of course, simulacrums are like cake. It's just like super easy. And the Soul Eater is so cool because it's like it really ramps your damage up. Like you're really ramping. Of course, with Bone Shatter Complex Armor having so much armor, you don't take any damage. And I suppose if I was just doing straight up bossing, like invitation bosses, I probably would use different builds. But I'm not sure. Maybe a Tides of Time would be a good belt for bossing until you get a Mageblood. But honestly, I do so much damage. I don't feel like I need to change the belt. I mean, there we have it. And I'm not even doing any shrines really. Like, if I do my normal shrine mapping, get your fleet shrine, get all your shrines up, you get huge, large, and in charge with the Behemoth. You got 10% character size, and you get a shrine that gives you even more character size. It's really awesome. And of course, if you're just getting started in the with the Behemoth, there are other options if you can't afford royal plates yet. You can get a Grutholt's pelt, which is Grutholt's pelt is an amazing introduction item for the Behemoth build. You get 10% life regeneration, you get a ton of life, and the armor and the evasion is okay, but it's not as high as this. So you're not going to have as much damage with the Grutholts. Even though you get global physical damage, it's just not as much as the royal plate, and you don't get the onslaught and all this cool stuff. Some other things you could probably do is like a formless if you're stacking a lot more fire resistance. Like with the fire resistance that I have, I could probably use a formless and get a little more damage, but I don't think it's worth it because I like the chaos resistance that I get from the helmet. I get some strength. So yeah, if you use a formless, you can get almost 40,000 more armor, right? Which would be almost 800,000 damage. And so yeah, that would be a lot more damage. And of course, if we turn our ruby flask, like if we craft a ruby flask, like this is the Mageblood, of course. I'll go ahead and craft the ruby flask again and make sure it's like, so the game charges on hit. Just put this here. Life regen there. Boom. Add the enchantment of the 70%. Everything's max. We add that. We upgrade that to this here. So 176%. So total of 900%. So that'd be 42,000 extra armor if you use the formless. The only downside is my chaos resistance would not be maxed with the formless. I would have to. Yeah, it is. So what am I missing with the? I guess I'm not missing anything. So yeah, you get a ton of damage with the formless, but you would lose out on attack damage, recoup. I would need the intelligence. I need the intelligence to equip my Ascension gloves. So you know what? I may actually change to the formless. So I just got this ring that has the extra chaos on it. I forgot that I upgraded to the amethyst ring, so I don't need the chaos on the helmet. For the boots, we can craft better boots. Cannot be poisoned. I stopped it. Can you believe I got 10% chaos resistance on this with 35% movement speed? Can you imagine if I hit just 20% chaos? That would have been so nice to have. But it gave me 10% on this great roll. It gave me 38 life, 554 armor on this great roll. Like, I was like, man, these essences are expensive to use, and I couldn't believe it. But I had to stop here because it's just like everything works out. So there we have it. That is the build. And we still have levels to gain. We can level up more. We got a few more things we can do. Pretty sure I'm using force multipliers at the moment.
Bodies, won't you?
Is that what I'm using? I have weight to finish. I thought I was using force multiplier. I think 2 of my skill points are wonky. I have to make sure that's correct. I'll import. But yeah, the formless probably is a lot more damage actually with the Mageblood setup. So even without the Mageblood setup, I think it would be pretty good. Let's import our character again. The formless. So it wouldn't be as much without the upgrades. Just 12,000 armor. So I would need a ton of extra all res. I think we could do better. How many white slots do I currently have on this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have a 9, 10, 11. So I could get 11. 12. I could get 12. So I only have 9 right now. So if we can get 12, that would make the formless a little better. I don't think I have enough chaos resistance currently. See, I would have to get some more chaos resistance. That's what I thought. I would need to roll a chaos resistance roll with the vulnerability on hit and some life. Or I could improve my boots. But there we have it. That's just a little discussion around the Behemoth. I think we have solved the Behemoth kind of for at least playing the game. Like you can do all the content, and if you have a Mageblood, you have a better weapon, you can definitely do Ubers on this build. And yeah, I think we solved the Behemoth for solo play. And if I actually went in a party with this character, I would be, I don't know, you probably juice the map up extraordinarily, and I would just be like the ultimate character. So maybe I'll try with an aura bot. If someone has some auras out there and you want to join my party, let me know. And we come in and do a map and see what it looks like, see how tanky I can get, or Simulacrum or something. But there we have it. I'll make sure I have the POB, everything fixed, because I messed up a lot of stuff with the flask. Something's messed up in it, but we'll fix everything, make sure everything's correct. And I think that covers everything, guys. A lot of the gear is really cheap to put together. Most of the stuff is crafted. You know, you just use essences to craft everything you need, really. Death Rush for some adrenaline when you're mapping. Really good stuff. And of course, we have some cool MTX. Look pretty cool. And I think that covers everything, guys. Nature's Affinity. And of course, you use this until you can get something like this. But that concludes the discussion with the Behemoth, my discoveries on the Behemoth class. And we're going to keep farming. Basically, I'm going to be farming Simulacrums all week. Trying to get enough currency to get a Mageblood. Once we get a Mageblood and a new mace, get a nice new mace, I'll do a build update once we get one of those things. If I get a new mace or Mageblood first, whichever comes first, we'll do a huge build update. We're also going to try to beat all Ubers on this build and prove that the Behemoth is actually really good. And I think I have proven that with the POB and being able to do a Simulacrum wave 40. I mean, not wave 40, but wave 15. So remember to like and subscribe if you like content like this. We do a lot of off-meta tanky builds. I play minions sometimes. I play mostly minions or tanky melee builds. But I like to make my builds super tanky. So there we have it. tanky Behemoth. Behemoth solved, guys. Everyone disregarded it. No spells, you can't play it, it's not gonna work. We made it work. We found a way to make it work. And of course, an Unascended Marauder is not better than the Behemoth. I think I've proven that. Steel Wield adds almost 11 million damage, the current setup, and of course if you have your Mageblood, all that, it's going to be a huge DPS loss. You have to have Steel Wield, and Incorruptible is necessary for the Divine Flesh setup, so an Unascended Marauder is not better. And until next time, XLs, peace out.